All right, we've been telling you about this hurricane season that kicks off on June 1, much to Tracy Burns' criticism. She's still here for now. But one stat for you to consider, not Tracy's longevity here, but the Gulf. Did you know, this is interesting, I did not know this, that most of the homes in the Gulf, and that's a real big hurricane-prone area, right? Most of them are not covered for flood insurance today. I mean, right now, if all the hurricanes they've had, they're not covered. So are taxpayers going to pick up the bill? Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, they do, Neil. I mean, it goes back to 1968 with the start of the National Flood Insurance Program, which essentially subsidizes coverage in high flood areas. A couple years after that, we got FEMA, which, of course, as we know, funnels billions of dollars to people in disaster areas. And I ask myself, why do they continue to live in these high-risk areas? I think they do to some extent because they know when a storm does come, the federal government's going to come riding in on a horse with billions of dollars of everyone's money.
You know, a lot of it, I know flood insurance, I know this very well. It's very, very costly, extremely expensive. It's gotten dramatically more so. So, Jonas, I can understand a lot of people thinking twice about it. But should there be penalties for those who don't?
Well, some people there are penalties for because they won't get bailed out and then they've lost their home. And you're right, private market rates and even the rates that are subsidized in some cases have gone up to $10,000 a year from just a few thousand. So it's not like it's a total government gravy train. I'm with Jonathan a little bit on this. There's definitely some subsidizing of living in high-risk areas, and it's being subsidized by everyone in America. I will say that people need to live in some of these regions because, like we just said, all this oil infrastructure there, well, people couldn't afford, workers couldn't afford to live in this area. How are we going to get all that oil into the country? So the government's subsidizing it, but they're also, if they didn't, they'd have to pay these people more, and then fuel would cost more.
Well, and I always feel, I'm not callous enough to say you live in a high-risk area. There are tons of communities that have gotten hit by tornadoes in the last couple of weeks that were not in areas prone to get tornadoes. So I think that is an empty argument in the end. But, Mark, to the point that if you are in a riskier area where hurricanes, for example, are more common, should it then be the law that you get flood insurance? In a lot of areas it is, but in a lot of these Gulf areas it is not.
I think it should be the law that you should have to require, they should require insurance. The question is who's going to underwrite that insurance?
Exactly.
Because no property casualty insurer in their right mind is going to write this, or the insurance is going to be so expensive no one will be able to buy it. The real question, I think, Neil, is why do we subsidize the development, because the development is subsidized, as well as the insurance of these high-risk areas? And they're very attractive areas, they're very nice areas, but they're not the reason people don't have to live in these areas. These are areas that are El Primo areas, that are often beachfront property, that are high risk, high rent.
But you know, to be fair, those people in those very high expensive, I know, I understand that. But actually, those in the beachfront and the high-end areas, they are paying their insurance in much higher percentages. So that's not quite the issue. It's when you just go a little inland. I looked at this a little bit. It's fascinating. They're the ones who are not, and it's all in the same bag.
But the income disparity drops precipitously when you move in just a little bit, so they can't afford it. And to Mark's point, these companies are not underwriting these loans, insurance policies for these people anymore.
You know what does, and the state does. Like in Florida, the state will essentially be the backer-upper, if you will,
and then you can get.
So then that is us. You know, if you're a Floridian, that's you.
But it's not.
You're a national taxpayer. That's you.
Right, but it's not unlike a 17-year-old boy's car insurance is much higher than a 35-year-old who's married because he's supposed to be the riskier person, and it's required by law that he has insurance. I actually think it should be viewed as the same, and it's not. And especially, as you said, in the areas where you move just in a little bit, the income falls, and they're the ones that can't afford to pick themselves up when they get hit.
Jonathan?
Oh, and Neil, I think ultimately it's not unlike the Federal Reserve bailing out Bear Stearns. It's the moral hazard argument of subsidizing risky behavior. And I think, everyone's right. I mean, there's certain areas of the country which are more prone to have disasters, natural disasters of various sorts. And why the federal government, with all of our taxpayer dollars, is subsidizing these people's oceanfront property?
You go.
I don't understand.
Everything, yes. There's one step away from whacking Hillary Clinton. All right, guys, I want to thank you all. Well, guys, you remember that nude maid who was accused of stealing $40,000 of jewelry? Well, you think we're over the energy hump as we drive out of May? Well, you forgot about hurricane season kicking off in June 1. Are our Fox Biz stars worried? Let's ask them. Jonathan Hoenig, Mark Tatge. We got Jonas Max Ferris here and Tracy Burns. Jonathan, you worried?
Well, Neil, I am. I mean, extra supply is so limited in the system that, yes, any disruption in that supply will result in a major spike. I mean, I happen to be long natural gas with an ETF, which is UNG, for just this reason. I mean, the system is so susceptible to any natural disaster, which is exactly why we need to focus on finding more supply and not this cockamamie conservation that the Greens want us to do.
He always gets in a political. That's the only thing I love about Jonathan, you know. Mark, what do you think of that?
I think a lot of the price is already factored into the price of oil already. Unless we have some sort of a big hit of a rig or some major refining area in the Gulf states, I think we're going to be okay. So I think a lot of this hyper price sensitivity we're seeing out there, it's going to be, you know, I think we'll get a bump, but I wouldn't worry too much about it.
You know, Tracy, every show I do here, I learn something. And when I'm paying attention. And earlier on at the start of the show, it's always when you speak, by the way, Tracy, but we had Huntsman here from Huntsman Chemical. And he was saying something that was simple, but it was clear. We have had a 1% increase in demand year over year in oil, right? And yet we've had this huge run-up in prices. And he was all but pointing the finger at those, much to Jonathan's chagrin, who have speculated and gunned this beyond what's real. What do you make of that?
Well, they're definitely out there. I mean, and you can't refute a guy like him because he's done a fabulous job with his company. I do think, though, that every year we have this conversation. Is oil going to spike because of the hurricanes? I think the hurricanes at this point...
Well, we've decided to devote a segment to it.
But every year...
That attitude dismisses it.
No. Every year we worry about it, and it turns out we worry about it for no reason.
Well, I'm going to do this a year from now, and I don't want you to say the same thing. So you're saying...
But I'm agreeing with Mark to the extent that I think a lot of it is priced in because every year we come up here, May, you know, hurricane season really doesn't begin until the middle of July, right, when things really kick in.
We said June 1.
But it really doesn't kick in until July.
That's why, like, go away in May, start in June. Go ahead.
And most of it then is priced in because we expect it. We expect these big hurricanes
do you
every
not
year.
remember when do you not remember when the Henry Hub was shut down after Katrina? I mean, prices for energy across the board
But what
soared.
happened last year? What happened last year, Jonathan?
We didn't have as many
Nothing.
hurricanes as the geniuses at the National Weather Service thought we were going to have.
Well, the geniuses have been wrong. 3 years ago, they thought it would be a mild season. Of course, that was Katrina. But, Jonas, what do you think?
Katrina was an anomaly. I mean, these forecasts for the doomsday seasons that they always have are almost always wrong. Occasionally, you have real serious trouble, but ordinarily, you have whatever, 6 hurricanes, a few are bad. There's some minor spikes you'd get in fuel prices and some minor shutdowns. That's all ordinary business. It's the out of the ordinary.
But do you think because the markets are more tension-filled than before, that they would respond?
There's more speculators in the market. I mean, like when you're buying a product that is long natural gas, he's not in the business. Jonathan's not going to turn the natural gas into whatever. He's just speculating on it. So that does drive the price up. You know, personally,
so Jonathan is contributing to the energy
price. I'm just saying, when you have a lot of speculative activity, people are gambling on the weather that comes in, and all of a sudden it does lead to more spikes. As far as the real hurricane activity, I don't think it's a big deal because, frankly, it mostly affects gasoline and natural gas. The oil market, the big fear in the oil market that's driven it to 130 is that the global supply is not going to keep up with global demand.
It just needs a brief disruption. Now, very quickly before we go to a break here, it's just the fear of that. It's short-lived. All of you are right. It's always short-lived when it happens. But are you worried about that? Mark?
We have an oil bubble here. We have an oil bubble, just like a housing bubble. I mean, sooner or later, the price of oil is going to have to drop. Now, could it go up some more? Sure. Could we have $5, $6 a gallon gasoline? Yeah. But it isn't going to go up forever.
You know, Mark, does it scare
ridiculous.
you that I agree with you? Would you change your position knowing that I agree with you? I want you to think about that during the break.
You know, sometimes...
See, give it some thought. All right, see, he's just shaking his head. Can't believe this. We'll have a lot more after this. Stick around.
Coming in June, 3 great specials heating up your summer. Learn simple ways to dig out of debt, save money, and invest. This June, don't miss Dave Ramsey's special events.
Every night, there's just one place to be. The best damn sports show, period. Come on in and be our guest for Sports Television's nightly party.
Ladies and gentlemen,
the world's greatest late-night sports show is just getting started. The best damn sports show, period. Weeknights on FSN.
What can I get for you, man?
Better life than the one I got.